Continuando con nuestro programa, daremos paso a la conferencia de apertura titulada El potencial educativo de los planetarios digitales, impartida por Shawn Laatsch, director del Emera Astronomy Center and Journal Planetarium de la Universidad de Maine. Un aplauso, por favor, para él.
Buenos días. Gracias for having me here in Mexico City. I'm very thrilled to be here. Representing the International Planetarium Society and also my home institution, the Emera Astronomy Center and Georgia Planetarium at the University of Maine, which is a mouthful, I know. Today I'm going to be talking to you about using the planetarium and transforming it via digital to do a variety of things in education, and I'll be hopefully taking us through this a little bit. I must admit I'm used to standing, speaking, and waving my arms a lot, so it's a little bit different here for me to be seated, but I promise I'll do my best. And we'll kind of go from there. So, let me see if I can make this thing work here. Let's just be pointing at any particular spot. Our laser pointer works. Maybe next slide.
Muy bien, yo estoy cerrado con el ponente.
There we go. So, trying to break up my talk into a couple of different things. I'll start off with a little bit of history because I always think that that is an important place to start. And that actually ties into some of the educational mission of the planetarium in general. I'll then get into the digital revolution in domes and where that is, how that started and a little bit of where we are today. And then talk about science visualization and how that is starting to transform education. I'll talk a little bit about IPS's thought on education in planetariums and what I think are best practices. And I'll sort of finish up with some final thoughts, and I definitely want to have time for question and answer. So, and there will be a quiz at the end to see if you're paying attention maybe. All right, well, let's see if we can try this again. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it just takes a little bit of time. So, a really quick history. Planetariums have been around for a while. One of the main reasons, of course, is people have always looked at the sky. We've used the sky to navigate, to tell time, to know when to plant and harvest our crops, when to hunt or fish for a variety of different creatures. So, the sky has been really important to us. And over time, people wanted to have a way to recreate this and share this with a broader audience. So what you're seeing here is the atmosphere, which is actually one of the first planetariums, you might say. The word planetarium actually has a variety of meanings. Some people think of it as being a model of the solar system with the sun and the planets going around. That's also a planetarium. But this is one of sort of the first attempts, the atmosphere, of being able to show the sky and someone would basically be inside a movable sphere that had holes punched through it, and lights from the outside would shine through it. And Apple actually has one of these at their facility even today. And let's see, there should be something else coming up here, but no, maybe. Nope, that's going backwards. Going backwards hard. There we go. Should be another inch. Nope. Okay. So, and then of course, after the atmosphere, in 1923, Walter Bauersfield produced what's called the Wonder of Vienna, the first Zeiss projector, which was the first projection planetarium, which could do the night sky and also show the motion of the sun and the 5 planets visible to the unaided eye. So basically, these items were used as an attempt to, of course, show the sky and to be able to mimic its motion. And people started to use them to teach, of course, everything from celestial navigation to just the basic knowledge about the sky. And going forward in time, of course, then eventually we had Armin Spitz came into the picture and started to also look at ways of inventing another type of projection planetarium. And there were several of these that were installed in small school systems around the United States, particularly around the time of Sputnik, when the U.S. was in the space race with the former Soviet Union. Of course, there was a big desire to get people interested in, of course, astronomy, science, and engineering in general. And so to do this, they started to install planetariums. In fact, some states in the U.S. even had a law in the book for a while that if you were building a new middle school or high school, you either had to have a planetarium or a swimming pool, because of course astronauts were trained in water tanks. So this is one of those things that happened early on. So the planetariums, of course, start off as this simple projection tool to show the nighttime sky. And it was a new way of doing it, because in the past you had to take people out and you rely on the clear sky to be able to really be able to share it with people. But by being able to show this at any time of day or night, and of course bringing it inside, you could reach many more people with the night sky, and you could start to teach them about, again, the basics of celestial motion, a little bit about our place in the universe. Now, the optomechanical projector, of course, really only showed the sky as viewed here from Earth. And that was a major limitation. All right, you need to have a dome to project in. And of course, most of the early presentations were always done live by someone who typically was an astronomy professor. And they were designed, of course, to teach classical astronomy, and they were used educationally for decades to do so. But of course, we wanted more. And so going forward, starting off around the 1950s, people started to use other ways to communicate astronomy with the public in planetariums. They started off with using slides, and many of you in this room might even remember what a slide is. I know I do. Spent many hours opaquing slides when I was coming up to the planetarium field in the 80s. And so, again, they started to use slides, and slides developed into panoramic projectors and then all skies, but imagery started to take a role in the planetarium. In fact, some folks even started to add video imagery as well. So these classical planetariums were able to show the night sky, and we started to present other things with simple imagery, but really it took the digital revolution to change planetariums and to make them more than what we could do in the past. And so planetary technology has grown, and of course, while optomechanical can show a beautiful night sky in our domes, and we can teach classical astronomy like constellations, planetary motion, moon phasing, eclipses, and even celestial navigation, that's only good for ground-based things. And we've been using telescopes since Galileo's time to look beyond the ground-based view of the heavens, to really explore our real universe and try to figure out our place in it. And over time, we've had to learn that we're not the center of the universe, and there'll be more about that later, but we've learned more and more. But for a long time, all we could show was this Earth-based Ptolemaic view of the heavens using these optomechanical machines. It doesn't mean they're bad, but they could really only do one thing. And they sort of were what we would say in English a one-trick pony. Do one thing with them and really only one thing well. But planetarium people wanted more, and people started to push the envelope in this area, looking at new ways of adding stuff. And of course, the modern digital planetarium, in terms of what we know as today, sort of started with, at IPS London in 1998 with full dome video projection. Now, prior to that, we had ENS, the cathode ray projection, and being able to, of course, line drawings and other things in the planetarium, but actually having full dome video projection, the first time it was debuted was at the London conference in '98. I think ENS had their own version called Star Rider in '99, if I remember correctly, or sometime close to then. Over at the ENS, trying to see if I'm correct on that. Close enough. I think the first ENS was in '83, yes, the cathode ray.
The first installation was, I think, the first demo was in early '80s.
Yeah, so in 1983 with the cathode ray and the line drawings was another way. And that actually allowed us to jump off the Earth for the first time with the ENS projector being able to get off the Earth and being able to look at three-dimensional views of the sky, at least in terms of the local universe and the stars that we could see in our night sky, being able to actually place them at three-dimensional positions, if you will. Well, even in '98, when this first debuted, there was full-blown video, and that's great for entertainment, but the question always has been, is that really good for education? And people make different arguments around this, and I'll present a couple thoughts on that going in farther. But really what it took to really get to what I would consider to be a real tool for education is you needed the real-time capabilities. And so ENS had developed that initially with their cathode ray projection, but then of course all of these different groups that started to design planetariums started to build real-time systems. Whether it was Digistar, of course, on the ENS side, whether it was Digital Sky and Skyscape side, RSA Cosmos, and many others, of course, came forward. And now we could actually use the full dome to do this projection. Now, it changed planetariums, though, and actually I was talking with some folks a little bit before we started this morning, talking about how in the old days you would build a planetarium, you would drop a star projector in the center of the room, and that projector would last for 30 to 50 years. But that's not the way it works today. Of course, today we use video projectors, and there's a variety of different options to choose from, whether it's a single, dual, or multiple channel. We use a cluster of computers, typically PCs, whereas I like to call them real computers. We typically have, one per channel. In some cases, that's starting to change now, plus a master and audio computer. And audio systems also, of course, we started to add digital audio into the planetarium, so 5.1 or 7.1, and now there's even 3D sound available in planetariums as well. So there's been this evolution. But changing to digital also poses its own unique problems for planetariums, because this technology doesn't last for 30 to 50 years. How long does your desktop computer last? 3, maybe 4 years if you're lucky, 5 if you're really lucky, okay? So typically it means that the technology replace or refresh that has to take with the modern planetarium is actually an issue. But these facilities have allowed us to do a lot more in terms of the new planetarium. And there's also a whole variety of different resolutions that are available as well. When the first one started off, they were low res, and they actually couldn't do that good of a job with the night sky. But of course, we went from low res projectors 1 and 2K up to 4K, which is probably the most common today. And now there's been a jump to 8K, and there's even discussion of 10 and 12K potentially out in the future. Again, it really is just scaled by how many projectors and how many computers you want to have in some regards. But it has changed, of course, the way we do things. There we go. So here's just an example, of course, of that resolution from 1K all the way up to 8K. Again, you can see that the size of the resolution, that's going to really increase things. When you get to 4K, your star field starts to look reasonably good. When you get to 8K, then it starts to get really good. Now, it's still not as good as a classical projector. That's not possible yet. But it will be in the future. There will be projectors that probably will get it pretty close to a classical projector. But the big thing, of course, is it allows us to do so much more than that classical projector would allow us to do. So visuals provide, of course, awesome immersion. We basically can put you in any environment on planet Earth. We can take you back in time. We can take you forward in time to the future. We can imagine where we might go in the future. We can show you the latest science data. So there's so much more that can be done in a modern planetarium than you could do with, of course, a classical one. And this has big implications for education and wanting to use these facilities to educate the next generation. Now, there's, in the opening statement, someone had asked about, are planetariums only for children? And there have been some statements out there about that. But you have to look deeper, because actually they go well beyond children. Yes, we still see a lot of children in our planetariums, most people do. But you can also teach university classes in them. You can teach high school classes in them. And the other thing, of course, is it's a lifelong learning tool to continue educating your society as a whole, which is a very important piece of what we try to do. We can do things now from, see, as I mentioned, I like to talk with my hands. Hard to do when you're at a seat, but we can do things such as teaching, from the micro level here. Now I'll try to go back and see if that works. Maybe. From the micro level here, from going down into the atom, to being able to represent the universe as it truly is. So you can fly now from Earth out to the edge of the universe going through clusters of galaxies, going through exoplanets, you name it. We can take you there using these digital facilities. So it's allowed us to actually teach modern astronomy. And this is really important if you want to teach university students or you want to teach, of course, higher levels. For children, you're not going to necessarily take them and fly them out to the slow and digital sky survey. But you would do that with college students. You would do that with high school students in some cases, trying to show them a better picture of their place in the universe. And again, so the modern planetarium allows us to go beyond that just classical astronomy that you typically would teach only to elementary students. We can demonstrate, of course, modern astronomy in a variety of new ways. And real-time models, of course, are making this really phenomenal in terms of the types of things that can do. We can demonstrate astronomical properties. At the last IPS conference, I remember a demonstration seeing how one of the manufacturers was actually using black hole information to actually see what you would do as you went around the black hole in terms of the physics with it, and showing this in real time in a planetarium. So again, a totally different way of doing it. The content, though, is not just limited to astronomy. And this is a big thing that is sort of a mind shift for planetariums, if you really want to be an educational facility, is that you can do more than astronomy in your domes now. We can do earth science and environmental science, climate science, which is very important to our planet as we go forward. Chemistry, biology. You can also do archaeology. You can do basically anything, again, because it's digital. Any type of thing that you want to demonstrate in these facilities is possible with the right amount of time and preparation. Now, it still takes a lot of effort, and it's not easy. Like I tell folks, we can't just drop a DVD in and hit play. It doesn't work that way, and those of you who run digital domes know that it is more complicated than that. But to have the possibilities there, and it's also a way that we can attract the younger generation to these facilities, because the same skills that they would use for building video games, they can use for building this content. And we're actually starting to see crossover between VR worlds and digital planetariums as well. So digital domes, of course, provide, and we'll see if this, maybe I will go forward, maybe not. Ah, there it goes. Dramatic immersion in a variety of topics. It engages the audience in new ways, of course. Maybe one more, maybe. I guess I am really used to, huh? Maybe not. Try. There it is. And stunning visuals, yes. And again, the content is limited to the imagination. So really, these domes can do much more than we can do with a classical planetarium. But again, they do pose their own set of challenges, as we mentioned, with the technology replaced, and the amount of effort it takes to create new content in some cases. Now, just to give you an idea of some of the content out there, and there's some astronomy content up here that you can see, but you'll also notice things like Cell, 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 which is basically a look at the human cells and cellular biology. Natural selection, which looks at the life of Charles Darwin. Life of trees, flies you inside trees and shows the importance of trees in the environment and how they work. Cleopatra's Universe is, of course, an archaeoastronomy program that looks at some of the astronomy of ancient Egypt. Chaos and Order looks at mathematical relationships. So again, this is just a smattering of some of the ways that you can use domes in addition to classical astronomy, things like the Space and Back, which look at space technology that we use in our everyday lives, or Dream to Discover, which looks at, the James Space Webb Telescope. And there's so much more, of course, that we can do. This is just a really quick smattering of some of the topics, but it gives you an idea that we can actually teach other subjects in the dome. Now, part of the problem is how do we communicate that message effectively to our audiences? Because many people, when they hear the word planetarium, they think you're going to go there to see the stars. And we still do that. In fact, in all of our programs where I am, we still share the night sky and tie back into it in some way, shape, or form. But it's hard to get people out of the mindset, why would you come to a planetarium, for instance, to learn about natural selection? Why would you do that in the classroom? Why would you come to a planetarium to learn about trees or about cells? Well, the answer is because we can show this to you in a dramatic, visual way, which is going to stimulate your senses and capture your imagination in a way that can't be done in a regular classroom. All right? So that takes us into the next sort of topic, you might say, which is science visualization, which basically refers to the methodology
¿No lo copié, señor? Digo.
of quickly and effectively displaying scientific data. And we do this in a variety of different ways. We can use it visual or other sensory types of ways to do it. But visual seems to be a way that connects with most people. Most people are visual learners in some way, shape, or form, either visual or also hands-on. And when you can show them something, you have a chance to display large amounts of data with a simple visual. It really can have a dramatic impact in the way that people understand that information. You have two simple images up here, or I call them simple images. One is of the Sloan Visual Sky Survey, which tries to show our position in the universe in terms of large-scale structure. And the other is the human brain. Both of these are complex topics to understand. But if we use visuals, we can often capture people's imagination with them and help them understand that data. All right? So there's a variety of motivations behind, of course, science visualization. One is to visualize or stimulate complex and realistic problems. So you might want to simulate something that's happening, whether it be inside the black hole or inside the human brain. But being able to visualize that, instead of just writing a whole bunch of math equations on the board, will make a bigger impact to your audiences. All right? One of the things that's been researched quite a bit is that it is very difficult for the human brain to make sense out of large volumes of data. We need visualization to help us understand it. It basically releases our brain, some of the resources we use in our brain when we see visuals, because they don't have to try to do all the complex calculations in that point. It's why sometimes people would draw pictures as they were doing math on the board too, or making equations and they draw graphs. Because visualizing it, again, allows you, your brain, to interpret that in a different way. It aids in our analyzing and interpreting, of course, and understanding of complex topics as well. And it allows us to improve scientific productivity, all right, by using, again, human visuals and computer graphics. And this really leads to enhanced teaching as a whole. Because now you can take a complex topic and you can show it to students in a dramatic new way. If you're going to talk about cells, you can actually fly them through a cell. That leaves a dramatic impact on them versus just talking about a cell or having a simple picture of a cell on a blackboard, for instance. So it really changes the way we do and what we do in notes. But it does take, again, some effort. There's a variety of reasons we can use this, of course. One thing is that we can use it to share phenomena and processes that are invisible. All right? So things that are either too large, like the structure of the universe or plate tectonics or things like that, to things that are too small, like molecules or cells, or even getting down now to what we're looking at with things like the super collider in CERN. We can demonstrate particle collisions in a planetarium on a large screen and be able to communicate that in a much easier way to try to understand. Things that are too fast, like chemical reactions, or again, looking at those particle collisions also is something that you can do with science visualization. So again, all these are motivations and ways that we can use this to hopefully help us teach in a better way. We're trying. There we go. Things that are too slow, like evolution. Again, you can demonstrate as well. And you can show complex spatial relationships. Now this might sound strange, but even basic astronomical phenomena are based on complex spatial relationships. Think of moon phasing, for example. All right? When we look at moon phasing, it's all about the three-dimensional relationship of the sun, moon, and Earth. And now you can actually have folks view this from a variety of different angles, not just from a ground-based view where they see the phases happening, but you can fly them out in space and have them look at it from above. You can show that relationship. You can show why, even though we have a full moon and a new moon every month, we don't have a solar or lunar eclipse every month, for instance. So it allows us to show complex spatial relationships, not just in astronomy, but of course in a variety of other topics in science as well. And this really has modernized what we can do with these notes. But there are some key things in terms of using these for education. And one of the things I get more and more concerned about as I travel, and I've seen planetariums in a variety of places around the globe, are how they're being used. And one of the key things in making these an educational facility, and not just something for entertainment, involves having live presenters or experts interacting with the audience. It's really important to have that live person. And I can give you an example of this from my earlier days. I worked at a small planetarium, and we used to have folks come in, they'd see our show, and afterwards we did some surveys of what did you like. And we kept getting a particular response: you're better than Planetarium X, and I'm not going to name the planetarium. But that planetarium was one of the largest ones in the US. And they had the most advanced equipment, and I was a small school planetarium at the time, and I didn't have anywhere near that. And so I started to dig deeper into this. I started to ask the audience, what do you mean by this? Why are you saying you're better than Planetarium X? And they said, because you have a live presenter, and you interact, and you're not just showing a movie. You're actually talking to the audience, you're explaining the subject, you're getting into detail, and you're going beyond just playing a movie. And so that was really a key thing. And I heard that more and more going through a variety of different facilities. So I really do think live presenters are key in making these an educational institution. It's not that they can't be if you don't have that, but it takes it well beyond just, of course, having an educational movie, which you can get on Discovery Channel, or you can get on Nat Geo Channel, or you can get wherever, or you can get in some, or at an IMAX. That's the other thing. Planetariums and IMAX movies are different, and the whole piece of that is having that live person, that live interaction with the audience. Building in local content to show relevancy also is important. If you want to teach students and you want to get them excited, for instance, about flight, talk to them about how flight impacts them. So, as an example from my home facility right now, we wanted to talk about flight in our planetarium, and we brought in a program that was produced called Dream to Fly. But we don't just show Dream to Fly. We went around and I talked to the people at our local airport. We went back and saw the history of that airport and how it related and how people started to fly there. And some of the people from our community that were related to getting that airport started. And some of them that even were involved in flying the first X-1s and moving faster than the speed of sound. And tied that back into it. And it makes a dramatic impact when you do that, to have a live introduction to your show that has some local connection. With the space in that, we, at the University of Maine, we have a couple different divisions. One of them is called the HIAT Project, Hypersonic Inflatable Altitude Decelerator. That's a mouthful. Try saying that 3 times in a row. But basically, it's a device for landing on the surface of Mars. So the space in that, we show that, and we show how the University of Maine is being involved in that, how our undergraduate students are being involved in that, how our high school students can participate in that project. Or we talked about wireless sensing network, because we just had a payload package launched to the International Space Station from the University of Maine. And again, how students were involved in that. So having that local connection really starts to tie in, and it makes the kids think that they can do this too. Not just the little kids, but the middle school, the high school, the college students. And it really changes the way that you can use your planetarium. It takes time and effort and thought, you know, to do that, to build those live pieces, but it really is key. Of course, we use digital visualization, and there again, one of the other things that's really important is accuracy of visualization. Don't just visualize to visualize, try to make it accurate as much as you can. And using real-time simulations, again, playback is great, but there are some things that I think are better to use real-time simulations for. Sorry. Yeah, probably. But using real-time simulations is really important as well. So these are a couple different key things. The other thing that is very popular in the US and in some parts of Europe where I've traveled is having a teacher guide that goes with the program that is lined up with the curriculum. And that again takes time and effort on behalf of the planetarium, having someone to actually do that and build that guide around the content. But hopefully that makes sure that when they come to the planetarium, it's not just a field trip. All right? Field trips are wonderful experiences, but if you really want it to be an educational experience, you have to take it beyond being just a one-time quick thing. Because you can't show them everything about flight in an hour. You can't teach them everything about natural selection in an hour. You can't teach them everything about moon phases in an hour, for that matter. So having something that takes that and extends that visit either as a pre or a post portion to that. And it's really important to work with local teachers when you do that, because I've also seen planetariums planetariums build it themselves, send it out, and they think it's going to be great. And the teachers get this stuff, and they're like, this doesn't work. We don't do this in our classroom. So getting teachers involved in that process actually builds a partnership in the community, which strengthens what the planetarium does, but also strengthens what you can do in terms of the education. And probably the biggest thing I would say is, if at all possible, to not just show a full-dome film or movie. That doesn't mean don't include that. All of our programs where I am have a live piece. They typically have a full-dome movie, and then they have another live piece. We sandwich it between a live sky at the end that we always finish with. We always go back to the fact that we are a planetarium after all. But we don't just play a movie and you're done. We have a live presenter that interacts with the audience, asks questions, that shows the local content. And again, I really think that's key if you're trying to make it an educational experience that goes beyond just, again, what an IMAX or movie theater would do. I mean, yes, it's dramatic in terms of the visualization side of it, and that is really important, but again, being able to take it beyond the wow and actually getting it to stick in their brain so that they can recall it is going to be important as well. Maybe. So I just want to show you too that there has been a bunch of education that has been done, and I know you probably can't read the text of this because it's really tiny, sorry about that. But there's been a variety of research that's taking place in planetariums, looking at classical astronomy things, but also looking at the ways planetariums can be used to teach other topics as well. And this is just a couple examples of a few articles. Maybe here, and this is a list actually. And my slides, I'll make them freely available to anyone who wants. I grab just a bunch of different topics that have been done in terms of how, one here I can see sort of from my vantage point is, go back to it, was the use of digital planetariums and the effectiveness of using digital planetariums to teach other topics. So I think that's somewhere over here. So I also wanted to mention a couple of course, examples of ways and facilities that are doing some of this stuff. And one, of course, is Active Planetarium in Chicago. And it's the oldest planetarium in the United States. But Active has a science visualization lab, and you'll be hearing from Mark Subarow later on during this conference, and he'll be talking a little bit about that. But visualizing things like the Sloan Digital Sky Survey, visualizing a whole variety of different things in terms of astronomical data. And they actually have a lab where people can come in and interact with the astronomers who are doing the research and learn how these visuals can be presented. And again, we can present live programs, which is, again, one of the key things I think that's important in planetariums. And they've really sort of been pioneering and pushing on this, and Mark also, of course, has been involved in a project called Data to Dome, which is an open source thing that is moving astronomical data into the dome in a variety of different ways. And again, I'll be letting him talk about that more during his presentation. We'll hear more about that, but this just gives you an example of a couple of facilities that are doing some of this. The Berlin Planetarium in Germany, I know there are others that have been doing this too, but Berlin Planetarium actually had a project where they got together a variety of planetariums from Germany, even a couple in the Netherlands, to work on a project looking at the human brain. And they were using some software to visualize it, but they also were engaging live speakers from their local community to actually talk about brain research in the planetarium, to have the live experts. Because that's the other thing. As planetarium people, most of us are trained in astronomy. We might not be able to give a full lecture on natural selection. I know I could. I do a little bit, but not a full lecture. Or be able to answer all the questions. So bringing in local experts creates, of course, partnerships in the community that can then take this forward and help you explain another topic. And that's one of the other things we try to do, is try to, of course, involve local experts whenever you can in the planetarium. Even if they're only there for a portion of it, but they help with creating the content you're doing. It makes a big difference. One of the new planetariums that just opened up is the Ezekiel Planetarium in Cape Town, South Africa. They've been a classical planetarium for a long time. They just reopened about a week or so ago, and they've upgraded to digital. And they have a unique partnership. In fact, the whole reason the planetarium was able to go digital was because it partnered with the University of Cape Town. And they're going to be using it for not just, of course, public presentations, but for astronomical research. So of course, they're working with the SKA, the Square Kilometer Array Project in South Africa, and a variety of the astronomers there to visualize new data in the dome. So again, there are unique partnerships that also can strengthen things. Here, Polytechnic Institute, I would expect that there would be ways to connect here as well to local presenters. And this can go well beyond, of course, astronomy. It can be astronomy, it can be something else that we specialize in. So, at our facility in Orono, Maine, we're a small planetarium on a university campus. I'm a 10-meter dome with 50 seats, so again, it's a tiny facility. But we do have a digital system, and we're starting to work with our Climate Change Institute, because the University of Maine has a nationally recognized Climate Change Institute, and so I contacted their director, and we're starting to take this data and getting it into a form that will be able to be ported to domes, and we're also trying to look at ways to make that open source. This software is called Climate Analyzer. You can look it up on the web and actually play with it on your cell phone or computer at home. But it allows you to visualize climate data over time. And we also are looking into, hopefully in the future, doing a workshop for planetarians of how to use their domes to teach climate science, because we think it's a really important piece of what we do. Planetarium, of course, Earth is a planet, so you can think of it that way, and we need to be taking better care of our planet. So why not use our domes to teach climate science? And again, I'm not an expert in that field, so we're going to, some of the local experts, have them involved in it and make sure that when we do train planetarians, they'll be doing that training and providing that to the local public. And these are just, again, a couple of examples. There are many other planetariums out there that do that. One of the other things I'll mention that we do that works well when you're at the university is we have something called the Science Lecture Series. We do that the first Thursday of the month. Again, we're a small community, so about 50,000 people where I live, so again, it's tiny. But we do a science lecture series the first Thursday of each month, and we bring in different people into the planetarium to present using the digital tools. So we had Paul Matsky, who's the director of the Climate Change Institute, in to present. We had a microbiologist come in and present cancer research. In fact, she presented on May 4th, so the title of her talk was May the 4th Be With You, From Lightsabers to Tricorders. And she tied that in and how light is being used in cancer research. But we used protein database in the dome. We had our computer visualization class build some graphics for her that we could, play back graphics that we could display for her. So again, we've been going out to different people on campus at the university and getting different speakers in from different topics to share what they're doing. Use the digital to do so. And we now, after starting that, we now have some departments at our university who are interested in using our facility to have their future PhDs defend in the planetarium using these visualization tools as a place to defend. So that's a pretty incredible thing. And again, so I urge you to build partnerships with your local community organizations. It could be university, but it could be others. We've done some partnerships with, the symphony, for instance. I believe Chicago, I know Adams had some partnerships with the symphony there as well to do special programming. So again, part of the thing about making the planetarium work is looking beyond just the planetarium and reaching out to the community and involving those people and involving the community and taking part in it. So planetarians, of course, work with a whole variety of astronomy education events, or education groups, excuse me, and these are just a few of them listed up here. And there's some unique partnerships to get this data into the dome. But we need to, again, look beyond astronomy and start looking at other sciences. And again, it's going to take time because we also have to educate our public. I know there's a planetarium in the US that tried to call itself the Digital Visualization Theater, and they had a really hard time getting public to come to them because no one knew what's a Digital Visualization Theater in DVT. No one understood that. So they went back and called it the planetarium, but they still had to really educate people about what they could do. So we need to go beyond just astronomy in our domes to really make it. So this is a long statement, and I'm not going to read it to you because it would take too long. But IPS does have an official statement on the role of planetariums in education, and basically, to sum it up, we feel that they're very important in education. They've been used to train astronauts, they've been used to show space exploration, but they've been used to do a whole variety of new things as well. Look back in time, to look forward in time. And they are a really amazing facility for your communities. Again, So I urge you, if you haven't checked out IPS, to also check out our website and you can learn a little bit about it. But we do have an official statement, and for some folks that can help them when they're talking about the educational importance of planetariums in their own community, or to try to justify, again, to folks as well. Planetariums provide education and share knowledge, and we communicate new discoveries, new data, new educational experiences, and of course practices. And one of the ways IPS tries to do this is through our journal, and we do a whole variety of other things too. So I will urge you to, of course, check out the International Planetarium Society. Of course, Data and Dome I mentioned before, but we also try to do a variety of presentations and, of course, conferences and special sessions around these different topics, getting experts from the field and experts from other areas to come in and discuss ways that domes can be used to connect the broader scientific community. And again, local partnerships are really important, but also expanding that out beyond is important as well. And through conferences, just like this conference here, we do want to invite you to attend the next IPS conference, which is going to be in 2018. We have ours every 2 years, and that will take place in Toulouse, France. And also, I'd like to appeal to the Mexican planetariums at large, who are affiliate members of IPS, to consider putting in a bid for the 2022 conference. We're going to be voting for our 2020 conference this fall at our council meeting, but we're looking for sites for 2022. We were in Monterey. I'd have to look back. It was a long time ago. It was well before my time, and I've been in this business for 30 years. But it was some years ago we were in Monterey, Mexico. That was many years ago. So it's time to come back to Mexico, don't you think? I'm hoping, yeah. So please consider. Yes. So put in a bid for 2022 or 2024, or talk to Mark Suberow, because he's going to be the person following in terms of the IPS president. He'll have to choose a council site too for 2019. So talk to him. That's another opportunity as well. But again, we really want to connect the community, and we think that as an international community, we're stronger as well. All right. So, just a couple quick finishing thoughts. Each year, approximately 150 million people visit roughly 4,500 planetariums worldwide. Now, these numbers are roughly based on some figures from Mark Peterson and Loch Ness Production, who does a survey, but also updated a little bit for the number of planetariums. And there's actually probably more than 4,500 planetariums globally, because planetariums range in size from the really big ones to small university or school ones down to portable ones. And the portable ones, actually, there's a lot of digital portables now, because they're going places and taking that planetarium to the people, you might say, when they can't get to close planetarium to them. And why, of course, do they do this? Well, they visit because we provide something that others don't. They want to explore their universe, their world, and become inspired. And they want to become educated students and citizens. One of the big things I always talk about with planetariums is that planetariums aren't formal education, we're informal education. But that is a really important piece, because planetariums provide a connection with a truly dark sky. We immerse people at different educational levels, and we provide things for all levels, all the way from pre-K, all the way up to university and lifelong learners, which are really important. Our world is becoming much more, technical, and as a result of this, science plays a really important role. And the planetariums are one of the ways that lifelong learners can come in and learn about science and keep up with this. And I have to say that I see this as being even more important in our modern age, because in some places right now, including where I live, there's been a bit of a war on science, which is really unfortunate. Because science is not waging a war, science is the quest for answers, the quest for knowledge. And we need people to be scientifically literate if they're going to, preserve and carry our people forward for the world, not just for one particular group or one particular nation. All right? And I think, so I think these facilities really can do that. And part of the way they can do it is with this live interaction with experts, getting people to actually talk to the people who do the science, I think, has a big impact as well. So a lot of, astronauts and cosmonauts and engineers will go back to their first experiences that inspired them. It wasn't a classroom. It typically was something outside of the classroom, whether it was a planetarium or a science museum or a library or so we need to provide people a chance to explore, but we actually, the biggest thing we need to do is we need to inspire them. We need to get them excited about science or technology. That's the key thing we can do. And again, as I mentioned, many folks can point back to their first informal science education or informal education experience as the thing that motivated them to become an astronaut, an engineer, a creator of food, a creator of what have you. So I think that's a really important piece that we provide. I'm going to try and finish here with a little video that I'm sure some of you are probably familiar with, but it's a piece from Carl Sagan, and it's sort of some final thoughts, but I sort of think it's really important in today's world, now more so than ever. It's a piece from Pale Blue Dot. And as you're listening to it and seeing that really short little video clip, I'd also like you to think, what is the planetarium's role in this? Because I really do think that as planetarians, we have a role to actually carry that message from Sagan forward, to go beyond and to really think about our world as a whole and exploration as a whole. So I think we're going to try to get that video up. I was asked to actually ask for that separately, I guess. And I'll just let you sit back and watch.
From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem like particularly interesting. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on the mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they can become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species can migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another
Now today, we can demonstrate this in our dome. We don't need a movie. You can actually do this in your modern digital planetarium. Starting from Earth, you can take people on that journey outward and give them a sense of their place in the universe, and hopefully make them think a little bit about their place in the universe and how tiny we really are, but how important it is for us as a society to work together. And I really think that planetariums basically are the place to do this and to share this. And so I would challenge you to do that with your audiences. Go out there, share that. Educate them in science, educate them in technology, but inspire them to want to take their journey farther. I'll finish with that and see if there are any other questions, and I probably might need help with that, so I'm going to actually put it here, but just in case. No, not really. But if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer a few if we have time. Just a question. Yes?
I was wondering, when you talk about students taking kind of field trips in the planetarium in order to...
¿Micrófono?
In order to...
Rojo.
Yeah, he's a teaching voice.
Maybe you can hear me, but it's okay. Okay. So, in that sense, have there been any experiences of doing evaluations on the way the students grab the concepts when they go to the planetarium versus the concepts they grab when they go only to their classroom? Is there any...
There have been some studies, at least I know of in the U.S. Julia Plummer is one who has done some studies where she's compared both doing it in a classroom setting and also doing it in a planetarium setting, with moon phasing in particular and that spatial visualization, and the students that actually were learned in the planetarium performed better. And they did pre-test and then post-test after lessons had been taught in different facilities. So there has been some research, and there needs to be more research, but there definitely has been some. I know when I was working at the University of Hawaii out in Hilo, we did a study with some undergraduate students because I was teaching undergraduate astronomy in the planetarium, and we had another professor who was teaching it in the classroom, and we actually did some pre and post tests looking at spatial visualization and learning, and the planetarium students, I was lucky, I can say, that we had a small sample size, but the students we actually had did outperform those that were taught in a traditional environment. So there has been some of this work done, but there definitely needs to be more of it done. Because I think that's one of the key things. Planetariums have only really scratched the surface. You know, I showed you quite an actually comprehensive list, which is scary, of how much research has been done in planetariums, so there needs to be more. But there has been some. Yeah, and so far it's been relatively positive, but yeah, there needs to be more.
Thank you.
Yes?
Yeah, thanks for this overview. It's very nice. And you mentioned that there is about 150 million people reached by 4,500 planetariums all over the world. How many do you have? How many facilities do you have in the U.S. and what's the annual assistance?
In the U.S., I would say if you put portables and regular other ones together, I would say we probably have somewhere around 1,800, maybe. And again, they range from the really big ones down to the really tiny ones. There's a lot more of the tiny ones. And again, in the space race, when the U.S. was in there was a lot of planetariums that went up. Now, not all of them are still operational. Some of the school planetariums no longer are, but there's, yeah.
That's a large number.
Yeah, it is a large number if you consider the portables and things like that, yeah.
How many people?
That's a more difficult question. And even the numbers that I do have, Loch Ness has done some surveying, and they collect the data and they extrapolate it. So I have to put, that's why you notice there was a couple asterisks there. There's some asterisks. That's an approximation of what we think based on the surveys they get back. But they do, every year they send out a request for people to, you know, give them their planetary information. I don't know what the numbers would be in the US. I would guess, you know, maybe a third, maybe. I don't know, it's hard to say. Because even though the US has a lot, there are a lot of small ones, and there are some in the US which are only in schools. And that's sort of a different thing. Like in the US, there are some that only do K-12 because they're part of a K-12 school system. They don't necessarily do public stuff, or they don't do others, and those sometimes you don't necessarily hear about what they're doing. And then you have university ones which sometimes do public, sometimes don't, and then you have, of course, the big museum ones. So that's complicated. That's actually one of the things, though, that IPS is very interested in getting better data, because again, if you want to go for a grant, you need to be able to say, we have X number of planetariums and we're going to reach them. If we distribute something via grant, we can reach this many planetariums if you have those numbers. So that's something that, yeah, we as an organization work on. Any other questions? Sold an highest bidder? Well, thank you so much for giving me a chance to share a little bit about it. And I know Mark and I are very eager to talk to any of you who want to learn more about IPS, how to get involved, and also to talk to you a little bit about considering putting in a bid for 2022. So we'll be around, so you come and see us.
Agradecemos a todas las personas que nos han acompañado a esta conferencia y los invitamos a continuar con los trabajos de este cuarto Festival de Planetarios en el Planetario Luis Enrique.